that's why we're here. And our focus, the main focuses have been clean energy, youth, and community participation. We have had the first two panels very captivating. The other one focusing on the youth and the communities, but as well as the strategy and the other one here. But we're now moving to another interesting conversation in the main discourse, session 9, that is looking at tax justice and transparency in the extractive sector. Here, our objective is very straightforward, addressing revenue losses and strengthening tax compliance in the mining sector. And of course, that's Zambia. And this panel, the expected outcome is institutional mechanism for reducing revenue losses or leakages. This will be moderated by JCTR, the Jesuit Center for Theoretical Reflection. Allow me to invite the moderator for this, JCTR, but also as she's coming, part of the panelists, Zambia Revenue Authority, Commissioner General, but I've been informed that Mr. Gwila is here. Then we have Mr. Michael Mansa, actually in Zambia. We also have again Ms. Tupa, Self-Help Africa, and we have Mr. Ian Winga, Zambia Extractive Industries and Transparency Initiative. Then we have Zambia Institute of Chartered Accountants. Then we have Ms. Chama Simbe from the local thing, this is from the advocacy of the lawyer as a program advocates. So I've also been advised by the moderator that she has a different mode of presentation. Let's give her a round of applause as she starts the session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I have the honor of taking us through a very interesting session. And for those who are in this breakaway session, the conversation around taxation has already started. So I hope we can continue to build on that. The actual panelists, I think, who may not be here, but have other representatives, so I will announce them shortly after a short presentation that we have from Mr. Ambani from the Zambia Revenue Authority. He's the acting director, specialized in tax office, the tax office mining. So let's round of applause. We are starting with this session. We have Mr. Ambani. We can welcome him.
Where am I? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, so I'm going to do this presentation on behalf of the Commissioner General who was supposed to be here, but unfortunately, due to other engagements, he is unable to come, and so he asked me to do this for him. Before we go into question and answer session, it's necessary because some of the questions that may be burning may already be answered by this presentation that I'm going to do. So I'm mindful and I'm quite quick. So Zambia Revenue Authority's presentation to the Zambia Alternative Mining Indaba. addressing revenue losses, and strengthening tax compliance in the mining sector. Right, so that's my outline presentation over there, covering mining sector contribution to tax revenue, mining sector contribution to tax revenue. And I'm also going to talk about keeping the revenue losses, what we're doing, and strengthening tax compliance, other initiatives, challenges, and then I'll conclude. Okay, so we obviously all of us here know why and how this sector is a very important sector to our country. For the various reasons, it contributes a lot to the GDP, also to revenues. It might interest you that the mining sector is the highest revenue contributor to the treasury, and also it employs a lot of people. And it is for that reason that we think this is a very, very critical area, and it generates a lot of interest. And also, it's important to know that in this country, it is only the Zambia Revenue Authority has the mandate to collect taxes on behalf of the country and its citizens. In this slide, we are talking about the revenue contribution by the mining sector. And like I've already stated, we have noted that this sector is contributing quite a lot. Just last year, in terms of the gross revenue contribution, we collected a total of 41.7 billion as ZRA. And I'm talking about gross collection here before we take out all those refunds and the like. Okay. And so this amount, in a nutshell, contributed a total of about 28%, 28% towards the budget for last year. But this is a drop from the previous year, which was about 30%, just coming from the sector, the mining sector. So you can see that this is how significant in terms of revenues that come from the mining sector going towards the budget. And of course, there's a graph there that has been showing the performance of the revenues over the years up to where we are. What are we doing to curb the revenue leakages? And that's why I'm sure we are all here. If there were no more revenue leakages, probably we will not even be here gathered in this manner. But because we think that this sector is important and there are certain challenges, certain revenue losses that are taking place in this sector, that's why we gather every time to look at how we can look at some of the challenges and some of the solutions. So we are here at Zambia Revenue Authority to just share with you what we are doing to keep these revenue losses. Number one, we have now strengthened the monitoring and the audit reforms at the ZRA. All right, so we've got strong mechanisms to strengthen revenue leakages, and one of them is the Moses system. Mrs. Mundia is already aware when I talk about Moses. She knows the Atlan sector. Moses system, Moses system is an acronym standing for Mineral Output Statistical and Evaluation System. This is a system where our miners are required to report their production and also to apply for their export permits. And so this is one of the systems which is in place now to digitalize the mining processes which we had previously. So in order to maintain the transparency in this sector, the Moses system has been put in place. And so you cannot report manually anymore, and you cannot export using manual forms. What else are we doing at the ZRA? We've increased the audit capacity focusing on high-risk areas, right? So ZRA now has really focused on not just auditing without much focus, but we focus on high-risk areas. So when we're talking about the mining sector, it's one of those areas which is high risk, and there's a targeted focus on that area. Further, what are we doing? We've created specializing mining units at the ZRA. What we talk about here is that there's a special focus instead of staff at ZRA focusing on everything. There's a statement of employees at the ZRA that are primarily just looking at the mining sector every day. So there have been a department that has been created where I'm coming from, and under that department there are various units that do monitor the mineral value chain process. They also look at the codage, the registration, the taxpayer exclusive, and all those systems of compliance. So there's that specialization that is happening there. We've also moved on to transfer pricing and profit shifting controls. Transfer pricing in next, transfer pricing audits. Transfer pricing mainly happens between the multinational companies, and we know that the investment in the mining sector is primarily by the major multinational companies, very little of impact for the locals. But for transfer pricing purposes, our target mainly looks at the larger players in the sector. And so we have strengthened that area in terms of audits. We are faring very well. Just recently, ZRA was able to score some victory. Last week, we had a major milestone, a victory where we had a transfer pricing case that was running for a very long time, where we audited a certain multinational company and they disputed our audits. And this case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and last week the judgment was in our favor, and we saw we're going to collect huge sums from them. So we give us the we are keeping those revenue leakages that have to do with transfer pricing, just in case people think there's no capacity. There is a lot of capacity. What else are we doing there? Customs and export controls. ZRA is the family of other customs authorities across the world. So we are comparing what exits from our borders and what enters other countries. So we've got these mechanisms and various agreements where we try to compare what has been exported from Zambia and what is being imported from other countries. It would be interesting to know, recently you heard of certain reports where people are saying there's so much gold has been received in countries like Dubai and others. When you compare on the Zambian side, you find very little showing the exports. So now, to ensure that everything is reported, we are now collaborating with other export authorities across the world to ensure that whenever they receive imports, they report. There's a tracking mechanism where they report anything that is reported from Zambia to ensure that there was compliance on those imports, which are exports on our side. Those are some of the measures that are happening. What else are we doing? We are also reducing the tax incentive leakages. We do realize that there are a lot of incentives that are there in the mining sector, which were well meant, but there are some abuses to some of these incentives. So we are carrying out a review to ensure that some of them are streamlined, some of them are even taken away where we think that there's abuse. So we are working towards those issues in order to curb the revenue leakages. What else are we doing to curb leakages? We are digitalizing the tax processes. I've already mentioned Moses as one of them, but also I'm sure I'll let you be aware that we've been on a campaign for smart invoice. All right, smart invoice is an electronic online system, real-time system. So these are some of the things that going to ensure that there's compliance, especially for VAT. Where we're coming from, there was a lot of frauds around VAT because of manual processes. People would just come up with an invoice where there was no transaction and claim huge refunds from the ZRA. We saw that as a loophole, but with Smart Invoice, which is now a digital platform, this issue is being addressed. And so we are moving with the digital era, and we have come across a lot of people who were previously claiming their refunds are gone down. We are thinking that these are milestones that deserve recommendation from citizens when they are meeting in this forum. What else are we doing? Intergovernmental, interagency collaboration. I heard the previous speakers spoke about this. I think it was the director of the program. There's a lot of collaboration between government agents at the moment. Where we're coming from, previously, we were working in silos, not anymore. We are every day having engagements with the Ministry of Mines, got engagements with the ZCCMYH, we've got engagements now. The latest on board is what we are calling the National Remote Sensing Center. Okay. National Remote Sensing Center, this is a very important government institution where now we're using digital satellite images to see if forests are being disturbed somewhere because of mining activities, and if people think that they can no longer register themselves. There's now satellite digital systems that have been put in place because of new technology that is coming on board, and also ZRA has now collaborated with this institution and many other institutions. And as we speak, the government is being coordinated to work as one unit to ensure that all of us have got one focus and work together towards keeping the revenue. Capacity building and specialization. ZRA is working towards capacity building. Thank you for that reminder. I'm halfway through. Okay, so we are also working towards regional and international cooperation. Zambia joined the global forum on exchange of information. Remember, I was talking about exchanging information globally, and that is helping us to curb leakages. For those people that are coming from other countries, get our minerals and export elsewhere, information is coming back to us to track until we get back that which was lost. All right. So I may not repeat myself with those some of those challenges. What are some of the challenges? Because this is important. What are some of the challenges? High levels of informal mining leading to tax evasion. In Zambia, everyone today they want to do business that has to do with mining. Unfortunately, people don't want to register when they're doing business in mining. This is one of the biggest challenges that we have. Mining is happening everywhere across this country. We want to appeal and we want to ensure that this informal mining is on the tax net, and it can only be done so by registration. It starts with the Ministry of Mines, PACRA, and eventually ZRA. These are very important. So we also make a passionate appeal for collaborative assistance in that area. There's low uptake of Moses for the artisanals. A lot of artisanal mining is taking place, but none of them reports the production on Moses, and very few. Let me not say none of them. I want to be kind to those that are good players in the ASM sector, but quite few are using those platforms. Misclassification and undervaluation of mineral exports. People go to the border, instead of describing the correct mineral they're exporting, they choose to misclassify so that they can underpay in terms of taxes. Those are challenges we're facing. There's also inadequate document or record keeping by most of our miners, especially ASM. We cannot even know what they're doing because there are no records to show. Okay, limited knowledge, and so we try to best to ensure that we educate them through countrywide tax engagement. Geographically spaced Most of the mining activities today, everywhere, where we're coming from, mining was only associated with the copper belt, but not anymore. There's mining everywhere. Southern, northwestern, everywhere in this country, there's mining. So we are yet to catch up with those locations as an authority as well, to ensure that our presence is felt everywhere. Okay. In a nutshell, I think I'm within my 10 minutes. I want to conclude here, but if there are further challenges or questions, I'll be happy to address my next statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that brief presentation and also highlighting all the key issues we're going to discuss. At this moment, join me in welcoming the rest of our panelists to help us go through and dissect our discussion this afternoon. I would like to invite Mr. Michael Mansal, who is the program's coordinator at local platform Zambia, actually, to join us. So, yes, please welcome our panelists. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Ian Minga, the National Coordinator at the Zambia EITI, as well as Mr. George Kanyembo, who is the transfer pricing expert at Dentons. And yes, for mic. Mic for our panelists. Can we have a mic, please? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so our session today is mainly to discuss tax justice and transparency in the extractive industry. And I think our video presentation has been a good groundwork for our discussion this afternoon. Not only because we have seen in the presentation, there are a number of challenges regarding revenue losses, tax evasion, and illicit financial flows in Zambia, and especially in the extractive sector. This is why our panelists here are going to help us discuss some critical issues within that. And to start us off, I think I would like to invite Mr. Kanyembo, who is a transfer pricing expert, and in the presentation, Mr. Mwenya had spoken to the financial flows that also affect revenue collection in the country. Now, we know that as a continent, we lose about 500 approximately billion US dollars, and for Zambia loses about 3.5 billion US dollars in missing financial flows. Could you help us just highlight some of the challenges that the country faces as a result of such missing financial flows?
No. Thank you so much. So, thank you so much, moderator, for that. It's true there has been a lot of talk regarding transfer pricing. And of course, the India is our action. The recent case involving the ZRA when it's called the win. Transfer pricing is quite diverse in terms of practice and enforcement. We have so many run-ins. especially in our country and the global stage. The illicit financial flows have been arranged or been there for quite some time now because of the boundaries that the transfer pricing. You may really understand that transfer pricing is somehow governed by specific laws. We have got government to government bilateral treaties, and we have also had a lot of establishment within our trades, our trade and transaction atmosphere, which protects to some extent transfer pricing. While we may not have some regulations, the regulations regarding transfer pricing, it's a bit very recent to the extent that the practice and administration has led to a lot of challenges. Currently, the primary law regarding transfer pricing is actually alleged to the income tax. Because that law is alleged to be inclined to the income tax. In practice, ZRA or the tax enforcers have been relying on a framework. So it's very difficult actually to policy a misdemeanor or misgiving using a framework, because the framework basically provides guidance. You may be aware that recently Zambia became part of the multilateral treaty. The multilateral treaty has actually given incentive for the government or the Zambia to actually amend part of those bilateral tax treaties, which we call the double taxation agreement. Because the main concern regarding transfer pricing has been the abuse regarding the tax treaties, which are governed by those multilateral or bilateral agreements, as well as the base erosion with the profit shift.
Yes.
Okay. So the revenue leakages can be actually attributed to those abuses regarding the tax treaties, as well as the weaknesses regarding our laws in policing transfer pricing. Also, the transfer pricing regulation is very new to the extent that most of the countries like ours rely on a framework which is governed by global institutions like the OECD as well as the ATFA. Okay.
Thank you so much. And with that, I think I'll move on to you, Mr. Mwika. You can help us look at how can contract and tax disclosure be improved across the extractive value chain.
Thank you very much for that question. Just to mention that the EITI, where I come from, is the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Our major focus is to promote transparency and accountability in the mining sector. And we do this in several ways. One of which is actually at the core, is to publish information and data relating to the payments, tax payments and non-tax payments made by mining companies to the government and other agencies of the government. And also, we do this through various means. And one of which I think what my colleague Mr. Ngwenya touched earlier on is the aspect around digitization. And I think for me that is really critical. Now, flowing back to your question around the importance of contracts and other instruments in trying to enhance transparency and accountability. My view is that I think your contract is your first port of call. That's your first document that you look out for, because it provides the terms that are actually, existing between a company, for example, and the government. But I should mention also that recently the country has gone into MOUs. And I think for me, the question we should be asking ourselves is that, are those MOUs actually contracts? And it will be interesting also to hear from civil society their impression about that. And I think also beyond the contracts, there's another very important, actually very critical area that we have to look at, which is your beneficial ownership information. And I think this goes beyond your shareholding. This looks at information about owners, individuals, human beings behind the assets. It is very critical that this information is understood. And perhaps the question we should be asking ourselves is that where do we actually find this information? You can find this information on beneficial ownership at background, for example. And I think the other question we should be asking ourselves is that is every company that is operating in this country disclosing that information? Furthermore, I think beyond just looking at the contracts, they are awesome. It is also useful to know some of the pressure points that civil society, for example, should consider along the value chain in terms of where some of these agreements, contracts, or any other relationship does exist. What that immediately comes to mind, in my view, is the role of state-owned enterprises. And here I'm talking about SCMIH, I'm talking about IDC. I know that it's common knowledge that IDC has gone into a joint venture with Mercurio in commodity trading. And I think it would be interesting to understand what that relationship is governed. What does it entail? And also, when you look at the relationship between ZCCMIH and consumption, we do have a royalty agreement. Does that constitute a contract? And for those of you that are interested to look at the detail of that document, we have it on our website. And I was yearning actually to also be privileged to show our photo so that people know where to find the dead bodies where they're buried. So we do have these documents at www.zambiaiti.org. When the website opens, on the top right corner, you click Zambia Iti portal, you have all this information. And so really in summary, just to mention that contracts are very vital, but we also need to know as a gathering that the mining sector in Zambia is governed by licenses. It's a license regime that we have. And these contracts, they come in several forms. And it is always important to be aware what contract exists where. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mwenga, and for sharing such a wonderful resource. Hopefully we can all utilize that. I'll now move on to Mr. Mansa to just highlight the role of civil society, media, as well as the youth, and how they can be empowered and what roles they play as in presenting oversight roles in the extractive, in the extractive tax governance.
Thank you so much, for that great question. And I think it to be important if I take off from a different angle to the question. So I'm coming to Action 8, the global platform. Now, what I think my colleagues would have not talked about is probably that's where I need to start from. We are discussing the idea of transparency and why this is critical in the governance system. So I'll speak first of all upfront to some of the critical issues why this is very, very important for young people as well as the stakeholders. Number one is that transparency gives us an opportunity, first of all, to actualize resources that this country deserves to get. The second part is that it's also a platform for community participation and engagement. But at the same time, it gives you ownership to some of the activities that are happening in your own communities. And I think Zambians deserve to know and understand what is happening in their own communities. Now, when you look at the role of civil society, media, and young people in enhancing transparency in the governance system, is basically where are they? First of all, in that governance system. That's the starting point. And if you look at most of what has been highlighted here, is that we are looking at systems of frameworks that in and themselves do not recognize and provide that platform where young people can engage, where communities can engage. I think there's been a site from my colleagues here, for example, talk about contracts and agreements. Actually, we have conducted a study and we are launching the study this year. And let me just speak to one of the key issues that came from the communities is that there is non-disclosure of agreements on what is happening in our communities. But at the same time, these are the very communities that are being impacted by the mining activities that you see in the communities. At the same time, Zambia again, between 2020, 2022 and 2023, lost about $330 million in tax exemptions, tax evasions, and discretionary tax agreements that have been done. Now, what does it do to this country in relation to debt? Because when you speak about tax and talking about debt, there is a thin line. And that becomes one of the most contentious issues, like what my comrade here has mentioned, and that's the interest of society organization. But the governance system, first of all, needs to provide that platform where communities could engage, communities could be part and parcel to the disclosure of agreements. But at the same time, what are some of the structures that are existing at the community level? When you talk about the community in Kasama, you talk about the community in Kapide, the community in Sowezi, a community in Mfuwe, or Wangwa, or Funsa, the question is, we have structures that are allowing them to engage with the players. And this is the players we're talking about, first of all, the government, we're also talking about the mining firms, we're also then talking about the key stakeholders within that value chain. And that becomes one of the key issues that has been missing. But what would be the alternative? We have been locked, I think, for quite some time now. And I think one of them is that this country is grappling with a number of issues, for example, social protection programs. And the view is that these resources should be able to help us as a country to improve economic development. And that does with governance systems. And one of them is a double taxation treaties or agreements. Some of the countries that whom we've signed for example, Ireland is a good example. We've got companies that are moving from Mauritius, registering in Ireland and operating in Zambia. And therefore, if they get their own resources, they can't pay tax because our agreement standards Zambia to Ireland is at zero. Okay, so that even if we improve and increase our copper production to 3 million metric tons, the question is, of that amount, how much are we going to actualize the revenue? And I think that could be the most important point. And that's why we are saying we need to move from this structural hindrance that denies ourselves access to the important resource that will transform communities, health, education, and other social protection programs that are quite critical for young people. But at the same time, the media is very important to act as expose and watchers to what is happening. And I think we've seen a number of institutions that have done it and others that have been inspired to continue to do it. Because the number of issues that are coming from these activities, one of them are rebalance, one of them are violations. So how can that be? So it is at the center of the media, civil society organizations, including capacity building. And I think my good brother next to me said one of the issues that they're looking at in terms of charity is capacity building of communities. And we see that civil society organizations are in these communities, working with community members. But the question is, do we have a link with the mining firms to understand some of those activities that the mines are doing? And then from that.
Thank you so much for the opening statement from our panelists to get us started. And maybe the ushers can assist us with some mics. We'll get ready for a Q&A session very soon. I know, Mr. Hambani, you already did your presentation, but you can also make a brief opening with regards to transparency and taxation. And with that, I think my own question to you would be, I know during the presentation, we highlighted one success that the administration has had in recovering some funds that were being used in financial flows. And with that, I think my question would be, how can every Zambian connect with that? What does that mean for the average Zambian? How is any revenue that the institution is able to recover ultimately getting back to the people of the country?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think that my presentation sets a platform for this debate, and I think I preempted already some of the comments that my colleagues are now touching on. Let me comment on the issue of transfer pricing. My friend said that went at length to talk about. And in my presentation, I did mention the aspect of how ZRA is now well capacitated in terms of addressing challenges of transfer pricing. And you know, transfer pricing, like my colleague has already alluded to, it's not an exact science. So that's no wonder why it takes long to resolve disputes around that area. And so at ZRA, we are also, other than the other mining units that I mentioned, we have created what we are calling an international taxation unit. And this is the unit within ZRA that just looks at matters of transfer pricing. On a daily basis, they are studying issues of transfer pricing globally, latest trends that are happening, and also seeing where we can make improvements. So ZRA is proactive and addressing these issues. Commenting on Ian has mentioned the role of the EITI. It would be also interesting to know when you go on that website for the EITI, you will see members of the ZRA there. We are key members of the EITI, and we work very, very closely with Ian here. And when I was talking about interagency collaboration, ZRA is in that area as well with the EITI, or in a quest to ensure that there's transparency, openness on matters of taxation. Ian touched on issues of beneficial ownership. At ZRA, when you go to look at our income tax return for companies that pay income tax, you will notice that one of the requirements as well from the ZRA point, we ask about matters of beneficial ownership. We also ask about the shareholding structure, the origins of these shareholders in these companies. And so we are all trying to be transparent and ensure that matters are fully disclosed so that we are transparent about these tax issues. And so we also do realize that there's lack of knowledge on matters of tax. Very few people pay attention. It's probably the elite and those with background of education and those with interest, they pay attention. But so we realized that gap. And there's a department within ZRA, the whole department that just looks at how can we engage the citizenry so that they are aware of what is happening, the developments, all these milestones that are happening. There are times when we score huge milestones, we do realize the citizens are not aware. So we have a department that addresses issues of creating awareness on what is happening in the tax area, new developments, teaching people how to pay, to file, milestones like what we are achieving on a year by year or on a daily basis, new developments. I think that we've been very proactive as ZRA to ensure that citizens are aware about their taxes and what are some of these benefits, what benefits do we see trickling down to the common person on the street, even when we are talking about achieving or scoring milestones such as the transfer price. How do citizens see or direct benefit from some of these? You will be interested to know when you look at the budget, national budget over the years, the contribution of tax revenue, which is locally mobilized by the Zambia Revenue Authority, the rate or the contribution in terms of the ratio has been going down, going up over the years now. We are currently looking at contributing up to 70% of the treasury collections in a year. And that is a huge, coming from a place where we were only collecting taxes, contributing 50% of the budget. We are now moving towards 70%. And I know that there are projections in future years, we could move further as high as 90% of the budget could just come from our own collections locally, and therefore issues of debt could be a thing of the past going forward. Where do these CDF funds that the government is rolling out? They are coming from the taxes that we are collecting as a government institution, ZRA. So the benefits to the to the common person can be seen from the treasury, what is being disbursed from the treasury as a direct input from the tax authority. I think these are some of the things I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our panelists for their brief opening words. I think for now we can move on to the rest of the room. We can take the first 3 questions. Okay, do we have someone assisting us? Okay, we can start here. And then on this side, we take one, ladies and gentlemen. We can take one question, and then we can take the other question from the other side of the room.
Thank you so much. My name is Tanika from Transparency International Zambia. So I'll keep my question brief. I really appreciate the presentation from ZRA. And my question to ZRA, but also all the panelists, is what lessons can we learn from that landmark case that you mentioned, that you took to court and you were successful in prosecuting? When we look at the other allegations of transfer pricing or illicit financial flows in the mining sector, how can we use that case to enhance compliance and ensure that the money that should be retained in this country is retained? So what lessons can be drawn, and how can civil society support strengthening those lessons we're learning? And then a short one, you mentioned the Moses system, and I think you also mentioned Mrs. Mundia. What is the compliance level from the ASM sector to the Moses system, and do we have production data from that sector that is coming and feeding into the Moses system? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is directed at gentleman Federer and Ian Waiwan. When you contrast in your presentation, the 50% of the revenue that was supposed to be collected against the statement where you're trying to negotiate concessions in the mining sector, you realize that to a larger extent, there's some sort of contradiction. Especially when you look at pronouncement that comes from the budgetary process, when the minister presents a budget, we hear government wants to collect so much in the mining sector. 6 months down the line, within the year, you are visited by mining firms, and that money doesn't come. Tax exemptions, or rather suspension from these minerals. Yet we are not benefiting as a country. That is one. And the other one is directed here. When you look at when you compare the mineral regimes, licensing versus contracts, we've been mining over 100 years now. Yet there's nothing to show for. Which model seems to be working better, especially when you look at other countries that are using different models as opposed to us who are using licensing. Thank you.
One more question.
Thank you so much. My name is from the Global Market Gates. Two questions. One goes to ZRA. the other one goes to the Zambia. So very things that doing anything possible to collect money from Zambian people as an operation. Yes, sure, exactly. It's okay. My question is how is ZRI implements both tax and fiscal policies while incentivizing businesses that focus on renewable energy and mining and sustainability by promoting just transition? That's the question that and the one for Zambia is there are discussions around the need to advocate for the creation of an environmental court or tribunal to address issues with environmental disputes, mining issues and also displacement. Well, at the moment, I think the cases are going anyway. Thank you.
So allow the panelists to just respond to these, and then we'll take another question.
Thank you so much. So multiple questions, and it's no surprise inside forum. Lessons learned from the transfer pricing and the recent territory. Yes, madam, we've learned lessons from there, and it has given us a renewed vigor. Which was certain areas where there was controversy, they've now been addressed by that court judgment. We know that now going forward, even now, spares in that area, we have no argument, and we know that that judgment has given us a renewed vigor to ensure that we do more in that area where we assist this taxpayer some of the transfer pricing issues, and so we can assure you that there will be more revenue coming in. And that's the biggest lesson we get from there. Never mind probably the quantum of the amount that we just scored in this, but it is the principle surrounding that transfer pricing audit that was undertaken. We now know that that area has been addressed. Very important. Secondly, Moses system databases artisanal compliance. Yes, I did touch on that. It is still a challenge for the artisanal to report most of their production that is going on. Artisanals, primarily, most of them operate in an environment of informal arrangement. They are not registered. Some of these people, they simply mine and sell without having any trace of what has happened. So yes, it's still a challenge. But we've seen an increased uptake in registration for Moses because with other initiatives that we've engaged as ZRI, where we are appointing some of the processing companies, where these are the companies that provide ready market for the artisans. What ZRI has done is to engage the processing companies that have set up everywhere dotted across this country to appoint them as agents of ZRA and aggregators. When we appoint them as aggregators, the data we collect from there, we then follow up for registering these artisanals. And when they are registered, we follow up on their compliance issues. And that compliance includes Moses system, where we think they should always record what their production. So it started from a very low, but we are moving. We have made a lot of progress in that area. There's a question in the drop in revenue between the 2 years that I spoke about in my presentation. Yes, there is that drop, and we acknowledge as ZRA, but we've got a reason to explain for that. Because at ZRA, we've done everything possible that we can to ensure that revenue leakages are addressed. Now, it will be interesting to know why was there that drop was there, because there was drop in production in the mines last year. If you check the years prior to that, production was quite good in the mining sector, but last year there was a huge drop in production, dropping to around 600 thereabout. Okay, the projection was that we collect. It was projected to be around 800, if I'm not mistaken, but the mines did not reach that target. And it also affects the revenues at the ZRA. Low production, low revenues. Other than that, there's another important factor, the exchange rate. If the exchange rate is not performing very well, even if you do what you can at ZRA, there will not be enough revenues. So those are the factors that caused attributed that drop between the two charges. We did an analysis, that's what has attributed to that drop. Concessions, don't you think there's arm twisting by multinationals? I would say so, that there's arm twisting. There is a give and take. Every time you hear there's some reversal of something you might have perceived progressive, there is a very big negotiation to even adjust. Okay, there will be a gain in another area. If you check other sectors, they will be complaining that there was a rise in certain taxes in a certain sector of the economy, because that is being compensated by something that might have been taken away where you originally might have thought we are going to collect. So there is no up twisting at all. What there is that we try to reach a win-win situation. You might also be interested to know the mining sector is very sensitive, a very sensitive investment area, where all the time you need to be a competitive destination for this investment. We are not the only country that has minerals. The same minerals we are talking about here in Zambia, next door the DRC, they have them. Now, there are some mining entities that would have invested in this country maybe 5 years ago. When the investment climate doesn't seem conducive to these mining investors, they cross borders and go next door. So to attract them, then you have to do something to ensure that we get something as a country as well, because we are competing for the same needs. So not arm twisting, but negotiations to have a win-win situation. I think I will address that very well. Tax policies for just tax and policies for in this transition. I didn't get this question very well. I did not get it very well. Maybe it has to do with what are we doing in the transition of the energy transition era, if I got it right. So what we are doing are the things that I mentioned in my presentation. There's so many initiatives that we are doing, interagency collaboration. We are against the tax audits. We have a forecast approach. We are now going digital in so many areas. We are simplifying the tax regime for the artisanals. It's not as complicated as the corporates. We are still doing a lot to ensure that life is made easy for the upcoming miners. So some of these are the things that we are doing to ensure that we benefit from the transition era of the energy era. So there's a lot more coming that we're going to do to ensure that we benefit, not to kill the industry, but to have a win-win situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Over to you. Yeah, there are some questions for you.
Thank you for those questions. Must admit they are really hard. I'm not very sure if I'm competent enough to give you the answers. Nevertheless, I think I'll begin with a question on the comparison between the license regime and the contract regime. And I think for us, from the EITF perspective, we always encourage stakeholders to use our data. And the answer lies in the data. Simply looking at what were the trends when we had a contract regime and what are the trends now. Suffice to mention that in a contract regime, it essentially means that each company will have its own terms with the government. And now that simply means that if you have 50 companies, you need to have 50 contracts and probably 50 contract managers. Whereas when you have a license regime, the terms are actually prescribed in the law, and therefore everyone knows what and how to play with the rules. But also to mention that I think the government now has made quite a lot of bold steps in introducing, for example, the Minerals Regulation Commission, which is actually on the cards. And one hopes that that is going to be one of the solutions to actually enhance the oversight of the sector. It is not going to be easy, but I believe that it's a step in the right direction. We have seen minerals commissions, for example, in Ghana and Tanzania, and you can make your judgment based on that. On the aspect around the environmental codes, I'm happy to see Aida in the audience, and I think you should, when they have preemptive record, discuss. I think she's quite competent in that regard. But just to mention that, indeed, we need a lot of very targeted skills in the mining sector. Skills that really help to ensure that we are literally at par with the investors. We understand what goes on in there. I would probably comment that the government is actually seriously thinking about creating a mining tribunal, and one hopes that is going to be one of the tools and instruments that provides ADR, alternative dispute resolution, before you even think about the courts. And I think for me, that would be my sort of hope in terms of really where we can start from. As you know, that I think there's a very loud slogan about mining in courts. People are tired and fatigued about going to court. They want to settle out of court. So maybe let's see how the mining tribunal is going to play out, and see how that works. In terms of incentives, I think Mr. Ngwenya handled that quite well. But for me, the comment would be, there is quite a lot of data out there. And I think for civil society, let's raise the bar into modeling. Let's bring our case, argue our cases using data. It will not be enough to actually just mention that there is twisting, there are these losses without providing, concrete evidence. And I think Mr. Ngwenya mentioned to say Zambia is not the only jurisdiction that is mining copper. We are seeing copper investments flowing into Botswana, Namibia, now Angola. And so I think as a country, the question we should be asking ourselves is that if Zambia were to stop mining copper, would the world notice? Probably not, probably yes. But I think also the other issue that we need to have on the cards is an issue around value addition. Isn't it interesting that we don't have any copper in this room? We should have had a copper roof, in fact, or even copper cups, copper spoons, and copper mics. So I think we need to have a very serious conversation around value chain. And this is Pauline Mundia now with her outfit. It's talking about value addition. And I think that's the direction we need to begin to think about. But of course, with the caveat that it's not the mining companies that are going to add value. We need another set of investors, the likes that can, complement the work that Zambefa is doing, and probably gain a little bit more value from the sector. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know we're running out of time, but we can take one last round of questions. There were a lot of hands. Okay, so this time we'll start this side and we'll end with you, sir. Okay, so we have one question this side. Do we have another question? We can start there. Okay, two questions. So we'll have that question and we'll have the last question on this side. You can go ahead, sir.
Thank you. My question goes here. Yeah. From yesterday and today, there have been issues around environment and social related issues, ESGs. What role does EITI play
in ensuring the transparency in the ESG example. Thank you.
We have a last question. We can have you as the last question.
Thanks so much. Two questions. One, yes. So the question for ZRA is that Section 50 of General Interpretation Act, which is what Zambia should use for the leadership, provides that the tax collection should be used at value. Value means value. The value of something that the taker is expected for it. And of course, from the presentation, I saw a lot of areas where the taker sometimes is using income tax act to collect tax specific to minerals. Yeah. So the question is, to what extent does ZRA interpret Section 50, which requires that ZRA generates tax from the value? That's number one. Number two, the question around how value changes from one hand to another. How does ZRA track that value? For example, if I come up across a stone, I pick it, probably I don't know the value, I can sell it at any price. But then the person that I sell that to, who have more value, because value is social, it's a social phenomenon. The value changes. So how does ZRA look at that, and what systems are they putting in place that track such value? Because that is very critical. The second question is around the licensing. I think it's supposed to hear again. In mineral law and policy, there are basically four types of contracts. So one is a JV, joint venture. The other one is concessionary. The other one is has to do with where you employ someone to simply extract the material and then you take over. And so on and so forth. And from history, in fact, pre-independence, Zambia has just been using one form of contractual issue. That is concessionary contract. It moved all the way up to 2008, Mines Act. So from 2008 to 2015, it introduced now what is called licensing. So the question is how do you think moving forward Zambia needs to look at other forms of mineral regimes, especially that there are just so many things, because you cannot use the license for copper to use it for emerald. You cannot use the license for emerald for Switzerland, because the parameters that is set in the law, most of the legal framework for tax purposes, they have certain parameters that are very static. Thank you so much.
We'll take the last question.
Thank you very much, moderator. The question goes to Zambia also. We are just starting from the workflow. Two things that came out was on the Moses system, that sometimes it's artifact. So what happens in a case that this old system is not working well, the miners make their routines, and then the other one is there a situation where miners can pay through an agent the taxes as in power? They give the minerals to one agent and then the agent is on. I think this was a situation that miners say are facing challenges when it comes to paying tax.
Thank you.
so much for the concluding discussion. So use your responses as concluding remarks as well. Allow the others to conclude as well.
Okay, so thank you. The question on generally how we value products to ensure we get the correct value for these stones and minerals. There are various valuation bases. For major minerals like copper, it's a very easy thing because mining entities, before they sell their products, they do valuation of their products using what are known as assaying companies. We have them in Lodge in Zambia. Among them is Alfred Knight and others. These are big established entities that are there to provide independent evaluation of minerals. Right? So the mining company, they have their own laboratory where they are selling. They will also have their laboratory before they can agree on the mineral content. And we use these reports as ZRA to ensure what has been reported conforms to the tax declarations. Other than that, ZRA has gone a step further. We have also invested in our own laboratories. Where we believe that the valuation does not make sense, we subject further valuation of those minerals within our own labs. We have created, we have invested in that area. So we are able to verify certain mineral valuations and come up with the correct mineral content, and also make sure that taxes are correctly paid. There are other minerals, of course, where we rely on contracts between buyer and seller, where it is possible, especially when it comes to industrial minerals. These are minerals mainly for construction purposes, sand, stones, those are classified as industrial minerals. For those ones, we only rely on the agreements between two parties, but we don't just end there. We go a step further to ensure that even the final payment reflects what was agreed in those contracts. But we are also investing in experts where we think that we are doubting certain valuation methods. We do engage experts to ensure that they give us a correct valuation. So I think I've done enough on that. And we've also invested, there's a unit that we are calling the mineral value data monitoring unit. This is a unit that tracks minerals from production up to the point they are sold. And that role that they play is everyday tracking and analyzing all the transactions in the sector to ensure that we don't lose out just on these issues of valuation. And then the other question coming from Madam here is about the Moses. The Moses sometimes is not working well. Yes, like any other ICT system, you expect once in a while to have a breakdown. But from my experience, the Moses has been working very well. And of course, there are a few days when you might find it's probably having challenges, but that is not such a significant portion of time where we think that this is not available. Most of the time, the system is working very well. The other thing to note is that this system sits at the Ministry of Mines. They are the owners of the system. ZRA only has access to it. Stakeholders will also access it for our own interests as a stakeholder. And so the Ministry of Mines is the key owner of the ownership is primarily that of the Ministry of Mines. But I can assure you it's working very well. Okay. Can miners pay their taxes through agents? Yes, miners can pay taxes through agents. But we need to understand what sort of agency relationship this is. We as we have appointed agents to collect taxes on our behalf. Is it that sort of agency relationship? We need to recognize the agency relationship that you have. Otherwise, the obligation, the final obligation for taxes remains with the principal of the agent. So where you've got the relationship and you probably don't notify the direct, should there be anything that happens in the course of verification, the obligation will still remain on the principal. So let us know what sort of relationships that you have and be able to advise. But yes, I can confirm that we do accept payments through agents subject to certain conditions. And in my concluding remarks, I just want to urge every Zambian to be patriotic. Let us contribute to our country by being good citizens. A tax is an obligation by every citizen. This country, to see it developed, we all need to take an interest. Let us contribute in whatever way we can. Let us bring out information to ZRA where we think that ZRA is not aware. Give us that information for us to use in our compliance drive. ZRA cannot have eyes everywhere. Eyes, some of them are you people, you know what is going on in various locations where ZRA may not have any presence. So we can only appeal. Let us all develop this country together by bringing this information to ZRA's knowledge so that we can ensure there is a citizenry contribution at all levels. I thank you, moderator.
That's where you can respond to the few questions briefly, as well as give your concluding remarks.
Thank you very much. I'll start with the question on ESG. I'm a little bit cynical about ESG. I think the sequencing of the acronym is wrong in my view. I tend to think that it should have been GSE, because the E and the S are creatures of the G. And therefore, I think we need to reflect quite profoundly in terms of what we really want to achieve out of this. Now, in terms of the EITI, we have contributed to this metric in several ways. In terms of the G, you will see the photo and plan is up there on the screen. We do disclose all the data and information about, for example, the licenses and the cadastre. And we are hoping by doing that, we are contributing to the governance of the cadastre system and also the allocation of mining rights. And thereby, of course, mitigating risks such as corruption, conflict of interest, and many others. And then in terms of the E, you will see and find, of course, on the portal as well, there is data on the Environmental Protection Fund. The question we are asking, who is paying and who is not paying? And I think that ties back to the issue of the environmental codes, whether there are sufficient sanctions. I should mention that for last year, the collection was $8 million from the sector in terms of the contributions. And you can make your calculations based on that, whether that is sufficient. On the socials, we do disclose information on employment. You will know that the mining sector currently employs 95,000 people directly. I don't know about the indirect contribution. So therefore, you find that information on our portal and in our reports are disaggregated by gender and also by country of origin, expatriates versus nationals. So that is as far as, in summary, how we contribute towards the ESG, in my view, the GSE metric. In terms of contracts, I think this is an interesting question. I like the fact that you have itemized the different modes of relationships. And I should also encourage you to look at the model that is used under Mabisa, this mine which is close to us, Donali Nickel. I think it explains one of the models that you didn't mention. Suffice to mention that the government, I think, has tried to pick best practices of each of these models. One of which, if you look at section 15 of the MRC, the new law, the Minerals Regulations Law, it provides powers to the minister to actually enter into different relationships. And I would encourage you colleagues to look at that, because in our upcoming EITI data disclosures, we will disclose a list of companies and licenses that have MOUs with the government, including sovereigns such as the EU, the Americans, the Chinese, the Indians, and many others that have gone into joint ventures. I should also mention that IDC has entered into a JV with Mercuria in commodity trading. Now, commodity trading is slightly different to mining. It looks at companies that bring minerals from the pit to the manufacturers. And these are not mining companies. And so in this jurisdiction, we do have Trafigura, which owns Puma Energy. We do have Glencore, and now we have Mercuria. So it is an invitation to you colleagues to look at these models and see whether these are fit for purpose. And therefore, as part of my concluding remarks, I think I should mention that please do make use of our data. The data set is actually quite huge. What you are seeing is just a snippet. If you scroll down, you will find data as latest as 2025. So some of these questions that are coming up can easily be answered using data. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
In my concluding remarks, I'd like to attest that we have actually seen a lot of tax improvements in administration. This has been also seen through affiliations with different international organizations, including the affirmation of the relationship with OECD. Hopefully, the recently won case was to set a precedent so that in future we may not have challenges as well as problems in the implementation of that administration. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think I'll conclude in this. I think most of the concerns that came up, basically in my summary, tied to the need, I think, and the concern that Zambians will have with the stakeholders this convening relates to the protection of human rights, the fundamental protection of human rights, and I think most of them raise that concern. The other section is to look at how can Zambia collect revenues to benefit its peoples and improve human social development, and I think that is quite key. Another issue that came out of this discussion is basically to look at ownership in terms of to what extent our citizens, the local citizens, of whom these activities are can benefit from there. And the other part is how can we strengthen and ensure that our governance systems are transparent, but also accountability to those in charge. And I think this is a call to all of us in the space, non-state and state actors, to look at some of these systems that are stated, but at the same time, is we are looking at agreements that we make. To what extent do those agreements, contracts, favor Zambians? Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. We can give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, everyone, for your interaction. My name is Nika Samson. I'm your moderator. Thank you.
I think we can do better for Presa. She's done a great job. I'll quickly invite everyone else for a short break. But later, I have other wishes. Mining sector is the number one that the level of domestic revenue. So as the guy is thinking about that, let me invite everyone for particular for 10 minutes. So just 2 minutes, so we can do it faster for of our 2 days. We are now going into the session that will be conducted by the National Sorry. Hello? Okay. Getting you. So we're getting to the closure. So we're going to the next steps. And I see your attention. I was waiting for that presentation on that table.
Thank you, sir. I noticed.
So some is gonna check it up, share, highlight the next steps. After the next steps, the reflection, do the reflection for the last 2 days. The key issues that have come up, then we share the next step. Someone maybe next unit. 10. Okay, can we get do a quick plenary session? Do we have people who have some questions or concerns or comments? Like I clearly advised, we have some of our stakeholders here that can share some of the respond to some of the issues we wish to be addressed. But if it's a question, avoid making a presentation, just ask. And if you want to make a comment, then you can make a comment. So, okay, the ushers can run through. Anyone who would like to make a comment, who have a question, to add more meat for the last 2 days. Okay, here one. Introduce yourself. Where you're coming from, then you can make a contribution.
My name is Ahmed. I'm coming from Ghana. This where they just state our finance. So that's why I send something to correct. So I think mine is an observation in a way. Such events are very, very to some extent. That there are certain times when we feel there are a few lapses when it comes to education. I believe if ample time is suggested that say 2 months before the event you are aware. I'm saying so because I learned of someone who was calling me the day I was traveling. So I didn't answer it because I didn't want to. There was a bit of a noise. So I took it as an observation to say, 1 month before information is reached to whoever who be traveling. Of course, by now we know who should be traveling and who travels for such an event. Side by side, the temperature is very important. Because some of us will come from severe start. So to have program guide with in advance. At least even the time of question is also very, very important because once you just find the timetable at the late hour, for people don't naturally 8 years ago now, but don't kind of be slow. So can you put in advance? Then the last one is just like done. I think this must be given about an hour for us who are in attendance to share our views. Because I remember the last time we did this opportunity to share this. Because it is not very good. You will leave such a wonderful session, then you go home with thinking, actually, you know, but while I'm you didn't have time to talk to Mr. And the stakeholders also, they must also listen to us so that anything that we want to get on the spot, we just continue.
Yeah, so yeah, it's very good observation. And I think organizations that are part of the organizing community also bear the responsibility to inform partners. So it's very, very important. Yeah. So we will take that. We take it there, maybe here. The young lady here. Can you start with the young lady that come here?
My name is Blessings Medemoya, and I'm also from Gawe. I would like to also add what the South said about air pollution. We all know that Gawe is one of the most toxic cities in the world, and seeing the situation in Gawe, and it said that no one should be living there because it's poisonous. So now, this goes to the Zambia Environmental Management Agency. I think this issue has been talked about like for a lot of years, and I don't know why they are not doing anything about it because people have been affected, especially the children who are more to that. So this is long overdue, and it needs to be addressed as quickly as possible because people are being affected. If you look at the Murubushi Road in Eric resident, the road is being damaged by the mine, the truck drivers are causing dust, and which is causing bad flow and coughs for children, which is very bad. And I think we need to start holding these mining industries accountable for whatever road damage and environmental damage they are doing. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So remediation, the carbon project, the water park, the remediation project, where we are hoping to do the restoration, achieve some level of preparation for the rate that they what has been done, where some okay, now, the land already defined. Then go to that, yes, go to that. The guy is privatizing the land, very young ladies, and it's people to start with solve their own relation and nationality.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm using my friend Western Province. I want to speak on some of your checking directed by the first we have a situation where, because of mine expansions, families and communities are being displaced to locations. So what we can understand is that when you have that, it's going to identify who you are. It shows your sense of belonging. It identifies you and what you are for. So recently, with what mines are saying with the expansion, we're having Rwanda is expanding with about 2,400 metric tons in 3 villages, which means those spots that they have identified means children, women, and young people who depend on that land need to be displaced for the mines to grow and for them to make more profit. Their land rights are being violated, their sense of belonging is being grabbed away from them, so is their identity. And then, when it comes to land compensations, recently in Northwestern Province, we had people from Kawela, Longe, and Kapijimbanga who were compensated, but the money was nothing worth to the land and the identity that they lost. How do you identify? I mean, how do you give a woman the 23,600 who lost about 7 hectares, who lost a sense of her, a part of her, who lost a part of their history? So I think as we set up the boards who are part of the compensation strategies and mechanisms, we need to sit down and ask ourselves, what we are giving back to the community, is it more than what we took away from them? That 23,000 is nothing compared to what these mining industries are making in a day, sometimes in a year, and in a month. We cannot put the cost of people's identity or in the name of growing as a nation economically. We cannot put the lives of people at risk because we want to see Zambia's grow at the end of the day. So I think as stakeholders seated here, as young people, as women, and as youths, we need to check ourselves and ask ourselves that in as much as we want this profit, is what we are doing to our community members worth it? Is the land that these people lose worth it? Is the profit that we want to get at the end of the day worth it? Who are we for? Are we supporting what the mines are doing to community members, or should we support the lives of the young people who lose their sense of belonging and their sense of identity in the process?
For those that are doing media, are you able to extract that and provide? She said something very, very important. Are we able to overstate the identity we have lost? You know, the culture of heritage, our meaning, isn't it? And when you speak to but Papa, who I had that, but it's better than book, and it's better than what I was a shot. But we're looking at how to engage in the process, and we hope and pray, and I think I've seen also some of the and I care for nature. That is giving a discourse and the global about Zambia. But we also need to uplift this young girl, give them the power, and give them the honor. I think she's very, very important to the conversation. For example, if people are listening, because I think the people were especially people, they were saying that their house is not an proper, but I think the percentage is that because of there are distance and the proximity to the water body. I think calculated the amount of tree that is specific. I think calculated the activity of the land that is specific. In Marathon, we were the story, yeah? People in this space that they were given in our day. And the first but in this so that's a so can I get to I have today?
Thank you very much. So much. But yeah, all right.
Thank you very much. My name is Betty Hakoban, coming from Really Great Sports, also being advocating for governance and human rights. My name is Betty Hakoban, I'm coming from Really Great Sports, human rights. And here, That is means having to spend our time to really bring out this area of this. It is one thing that we need to finish now on the country because the function. We see so much happening. I want the issue of my question spoke about how some of the things that they have, especially and the point I want to touch is the ministry is they have to be able to open the door for the media, especially in terms of us, because we are going into a very tricky election in 2026, and we are also the people that are supposed to be getting information. We start to set the agenda and want to be objective in as far as we are reporting that. And what we want to see is when we're talking to the community to get the concerns and put them on the table, and of course, give what the community says, finding the solution on how we get into the country. So my point is, knowing the fact that in the other planning session, the look to object to appear relations because I don't believe that's why so that as we get to bring out the information, policies different reports that I need to write about, we want to engage with the ministry to see how best we can be able to have first-hand information so that as we talk to the community and also get to report on these issues, we're not far one-sided, but become subjective in bringing out what is supposed to take us forward as a country. And also just the community members together. So the things that we put out is one way to find a solution to the table and what we need to then in the background. Thank you so much. Looking forward to much more on this.
Thank you. So she said something like setting the agenda. Okay. You can always create an agenda and set that what are some of the things you want to see the manifesto if they want to. You cannot be polite if things are real. We need to use that opportunity to say that the community has to manifest today. You don't see this issue, you will not vote for it. You will not pass it. As I said, I think the constitution that when people come to power, they were able to say we need a new constitution. I think that was popular. I think so setting the agenda is very, very important. That's one that should be please let's identify some of the steps that we shared by our coordinator. Yeah, so my brother there now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, first of all, just more like a question that I want to ask the representative secretary on the issue of the national taxation units. Of course, we have issues legal cases in Zambia as early as 2009 we had Rengo, where actually 2020 actually was going to the reaction. And then my question is, how do we have the capacity to really find cases that involve different countries and jurisdictions? Because it's not just people who have been these other companies from these other countries. And then my submission is actually on the issue of stakeholder engagement. And my dilemma was this because of like what happened to Metals and yesterday people from Metals. And I was hoping that during this industry give us like the way forward, how best they are going to avoid such this is happening again, because it's not the first time that such a different spirit has taking place in people. And then the environmental sustainability also comes. In as much as speaking about environmental sustainability, climate change, and these other issues, we should also make sure that the mines will take over the responsibilities that actually they have to take over. The corporate responsibility. How many mines do we have in Zambia? How many mines actually doing so much when it comes to corporate social responsibility? The roads that goes to even the same northwestern province, if not the central part of Sulawesi, go to Kimasana, go to areas in Madrid, look at the roads, but we're talking about mines, F2M, let's go to Nikko, where the mine is here. Look at the area itself. the corporate social responsibility has been an issue in Zambia. Why is the tax that these people actually getting? And it obviously inventing, because if you look at the cases that they made in terms of different mining companies, they are huge. And then look at the social corporate responsibility. So Zema should also come here. We should also have different stakeholders such as the bishop, so that they should also give us the same results. What implications are there? And what are we actually looking out for in the next 5 to 8 years? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I just have two contributions. How much can you think? Can I think that there? So is there you must speak in this the National Institute for College. For me, my contribution will be based on wanting to emphasize and make sure having representatives that will work in favor of the people that own the land where the mine is, that own the land where the resources are. Because it is in my best interest to ask who stands for those people. When people discover these big tech companies discover to say there's more to their resources than land, who stands on their side in order to support them? Because in most cases, you find that where these resources are located, there are rural areas, and most of the people that are settled there, should I use the word illiterate, they do not know the value of the resources that are there. So you find that they are blindfolded to out there. But in the best interest of everyone, it's best that we have representatives that are always present before these buyers take over the land in order to serve and support and stand in the favor of the locals so that they can have enough to gain from the land that they give out. Thank you. Thank you. Mine is short, and that's one direct to direct. Profit making so is something that comes to us in mining companies. Now, are there any instances that is in the area serious mining companies maybe trying to invent tax? If that's the case, what are some of let me just say, is there any mechanism that has been put in place to make sure that they don't plan? Now, if they do, or the company consider a mining company in the act of trying to invent that, what measures? Is there maybe a penalty that can be given? Thank you. So that's yeah.
Thank you so very much. James Silvio from Zambia. My question goes to Minister of Mines. In Zambia district, Mujinga Chindo, we have a very serious issue where massive exploration has been taking place. Yeah, so there in Mujinga Chindo, a lot of damage has been caused to the land where people do explore maybe for 3 years without finding the minerals they are looking for. So now there is total land degradation. So now my advice to the Minister of Mine that he maybe try to pass through the area so that you see the damage which has been done and is still continuing by these miners and those who we call the illegal miners. And on top of that, the Mchinda boarding school, near Mchinda boarding school, there was a stop order given sometime like with the companies which are mining near the boarding school, which is in the process of construction. The stop order was given, but currently, as I'm speaking, there is a mining company here which is doing mining. So we don't know who has allowed those people to continue mining. The government knows about this area, but the mining companies continue to do the mining. So is the Minister of Mines aware? If you are aware, what steps are you going to take to stop that mining because the school is at risk? Thank you so very much.
Yeah. We can have him and Yama Malaysia.
Mwani nasa kwa mpapo nasa kwa mpapo ni tapili. Ang wabro ko
We are starting the basic down.
Oh, I speak in Indaba.
No, yeah.
Mambo ile jana shaka kidogo wangu sana. Ya kwamba tuwatengeneza papara kuingisha private institutions ambapo mamebezi kuwashima mu government ya kaza kwa.
For presenting this issue to the government, we are going to other people in the private sector to help us resolve this issue.
Kurute kwa tsote msako kwa mamba wale Zambia wakende ukano kuoja.
Very soon we hear that people are starting to
mambo gemwa kumbonge mwaya kukarumbira kanse kukarumbira mafuta kama kumeka ngapo pia sipata diferenze ambaye kuleta leo kama mbona usiku kwa msiku
insolvency Kawela and other areas you hear the same issues coming.
So mwani napera pano gete kwa mama kwa wao kama pesa kama tuwazikwa.
I'm so here in the other issues.
Thank you very much. We also have to express the land.
Okay, I'm waiting for the company. When you ready for that, I'll give that I can see that he came to the and the body. When we come to the Indaba, he said, which is very bad. It becomes the university by him. He comes to the meeting here is very. There is no English. Even in the Bible,
Yes.
so yes,
Yes. Yes.
So that this guy we should come from this kingdom. We should come from this that I that's if you was saying this get right to action. So that's not let us get it.
Exactly.
We're not getting to us to the presentation. This is the last time we see you here. Some of you have done somebody feel that your program is bigger than down. So I'm grateful, but also let's give a clap to yourself. You've been a very good audience and also the panel. Clap for yourself. Clap loud. Some of now taking it up, but we find and this will come some additional coordinator for Bible. Okay. I suspect your time to Umani. Oh, but this is just the last half. And when I look around the room, I still giving us hope. I hope you are as proud of yourself as I am proud of you. Therefore, this secretary Zambia was much mine. My role is after is also to do a quick look at yesterday and give some intro to tomorrow. And then I'll invite the national chairperson of the publishers of Zambia, who is also the Prime President of Zambia government, was the project master. And I consider that Charlotte was able to share from the US. I don't know where I should face this side of the side. So I'm going to use this screen. What are the things I'll be saying are being projected on the screens? And the first bullet is speaking to the category of delegates. That included yourselves, both sides, community members, part of the context in which hosted this event was that we are in a critical stage. I'm using the word junction. You know, with what you hear the government saying, the production techniques, the reforms, both policy and legal reforms, and some institutional reforms. So it's a critical junction. Really what is. And the last 2 days helped us affirm our commitment to being part of the future, using our skills and our resources. Before I even go to that slide, I want to just give you an intro, just a bit of what was here in terms of numbers. Yes, we had 40 people that were registered, that have signed the registers. And I think that is phenomenal, isn't it? We were targeting 200 people. So 140 people signed these registers. I know that a number of us, particularly the heads of institutions, government senior leaders, were unable to sign. Our participation was around
between 20 to 40 people, including some of the panelists that were just coming for their panels. We have 10 panels, and each panel had a minimum, according to our program, but minimum of 5. So if you do the math there, you see that we got close to 200 numbers that we are projected for this Indaba. So just another round of applause to yourselves for just this remarkable achievement. So some of the things that we have picked up, as well as the recommendations under those things. One of them is community participation, that host communities ought to benefit through some equitable revenue sharing mechanisms, and also strengthening of both the land rights. There is a resounding recommendation that we need to have structured platforms for those categories of citizenry to engage and begin to influence what is happening in the minds, both the policy and contract aspect. In terms of transparency and accountability, that has been for full disclosure. If there hasn't been disclosure, it is you and I that are responsible for that state of affairs, because we have not exited. You know, the kind of pressure we put when we build Mucosa and we are all talking about it. We need to get to that level in terms of contracts and licenses in the mining sector. That excitement, that national level conversation, that if each one of us begin to demand that, can we get to know the details that are contained in the contracts, the licenses, and so on. I think it will happen. It can happen. The mining cadastre system strengthening, I think that forms part of the core of mining governance, and in a sense helps reduce speculation related to that, corruption, and link that to illicit financial flows. The role of the legislature and other oversight institutions that overall need to be strengthened. So National Assembly or Parliament, institutions like the Financial Intelligence Center, office, and other oversight institutions to strengthen the human rights. Under ESG enforcement, tokenistic CSR, and mainstreaming ESG. At some conference in May, we were discussing ESG. I'll leave it there. The next slide, sir. Value addition and industrialization, what emerged? Operationalizing the Minerals Regulation Commission, the local content, their provisions, the local content regulations, we've seen the drafts. The critical mineral strategy, which I hope was very familiar with. If we could invest a little more in copper, basically the critical minerals, in the next slide, the next row there, supporting the SMEs that we need to provide additional support, create industrial hubs, energy and transport infrastructure. The African Free Trade
Africa Confederation Free Trade Area and the Lobito Corridor. How do we leverage that? But in other platforms, we have said that the Africa Confederation Free Trade Area is not as important if we do not have direct access to Angola, Zambia and Angola, Zambia and DRC. So yes, at the Pan-African level, we need to promote that, but come home, get home and promote trade between our neighboring, between our neighboring countries. And perhaps it's very bad to next. But what extent, as a citizenry, are we engaged to facilitate easier movement? People and those across the borders. That's inclusive growth through the formalization. We're still using the word formalize in the SM sector. So accelerate the SM formalization with environmental safeguards, access to finance, training, and when we do that, the SM sector will create jobs, increase revenue at household level, and that translates into wider. With regards to the MSPs and governance, we are recommending strengthening the legal and policy framework and enforce them consistently. Embedding or integrating local ownership, JVs, and community benefits. Somebody said we do have an environmental protection fund. Why don't we have the community protection fund? We can also learn from regional, global, both best practices from the region as well as and ensure merit-based leadership, transparent contracts, and strong oversight. We cannot overemphasize the value of leadership, the significant role leadership plays in that regard. And by the way, leadership is not only at political level. Leadership at individual level. We manage it ourselves as individuals. When we assume positions of authority, and reflect that. The battery value chain and clean energy transition, can we position Zambia as a regional leader in the battery and clean energy? But that's Zambia is you. That's Zambia is been. What can we do with that? So that as a country, we can do that. Technology transfer. To what extent can we learn from the best? They come a clear project program laid out that speaks to how what they know will be adopted and passed on. And being able to build domestic and regional demands. Can we do that? Can we work towards that? Financing and revenue governance. The financing models, how can we make them much more transparent, inclusive and sustainable? Is there a way of investing in revenues, social services? What happened is sinking fund? How much money is there? And who is responsible for the sinking fund? But even before we talk about the sinking fund, we have the environmental protection fund. How is it accessed?
should we reform that? CAG did a good study about the Right Protection Fund. We need to reform that. I think there was a policy. The same issues of combating transfer pricing. And there are Zambia as well. What does this mean to you and I? To various stakeholders, government, can using policy consistency. Can we have one? Can we help governments be a bit more accountable, enforcing them? How is our education system responding, preparing us for the next 50 years? Or is just churning out employees? The private sector, by responsible mining, how do we encourage them to embrace responsible mining? Value addition, fair trade, contract transparency. The things I mentioned this, that it is you, the bulk of the way comrades, colleagues, co-workers, partners is us, you and I. Staying engaged. Staying engaged. There's a community in camp that really need to be okay, as individual citizens, mobilize yourselves and begin to follow regional partners and global agencies. How do we strengthen? How can we collaborate on industrialization, infrastructure, and community? Yes, there are people that have moved to our paths or our path. Can we learn from? For the media, how many media houses have a dedicated program on mining? When we were in Cabo last year, ranging on lead poisoning, I think one of the conversations in the meeting that we held was, can the media, okay, all the stations begin to talk about every day, every hour, every 2 hours? Is that something we can do? And a colleague from Eastern Boys talked about strengthening. Maybe we need to consider that. Speak to the media owners, institutions, partner media owners, institutions. I mean, media owners, and have some engagement. Because they're the ones who set the policy for the radio station, for the TV station. How can we tap into their energies and invite them to partner and advocate? Just 5 minutes every day. So we are hoping that our vision, our collective vision, is to transform Zambia's mineral wealth into a legacy of prosperity, equity, and sustainability for present and future generations, where no mining community remains in poverty. The sector fuels stronger growth, environmental stewardship, and social justice. We surely can hold that and use it to galvanize our actions. The slides, you may not see it from where you are, you may not be able to read it. But there are about 7 points that we're inviting you to pledge to work towards in realizing that vision. Can I just go back to it? how can we enhance, there's an activity to enhance community awareness and engagement. Who in here can say between now and the next summit, we commit to doing this? Who in here can commit to holding mining forums, mining policy and contract revenue forum? Because there is a new mining policy 2022. There's a 2025 Acts, the 2024 Act, 2025 Acts. There's low content coming up, regulations. And unless people understand this, we cannot use them to demand justice. So therefore, it requires that we begin to develop interventions that can help us popularize this. Who in here? So those questions, please, I hope you're writing the answers, because we need to get away from here with those responses. So we commit to do this. Then Secretariat will follow up. Environmental monitoring and compliance programs. Many of you have some environmental monitoring and compliance programs. Maybe they were ending with some or a few activities coming down in the next couple of months. But is it something we can pick up and say, us as institution A or community B, between in the next 12 months, in our area of operation, we're going to expand this space with the focus that has. Formalization and support. Part of the reason things don't work because we just recommend and nobody says, I am going to do it. Who in here can help us drive this agenda to formalization and provide support to the areas? Part of the support is just or open doors, helping help unlock some doors so that they can access background, they can access Indaba, they can access services. Small steps. Value addition, we talked about value addition for a long time. But it still comes hard. Maybe because the civil society and the partners for civil society, they haven't picked it up and say, we are running with this value addition and the creation of industrial hubs. Maybe BCM consulting will help us. We need to see some offers. Or we want us to write to you individual organizations. Because even actually it has changed the name. You know the name now, even the right name. Isn't it my green energy and battery manufacturing? I think that's really applying somebody talking about Mansa batteries. It's amazing how we are all talking about the battery, but it's Mansa batteries. You know how these development initiatives are not locally driven. Because I think if they were locally driven, we would be promoting the Mansa battery project. But no, because maybe it's coming from elsewhere. All of us, many of us are talking about the jealousy, Zambia and the US project. But we don't have the Mansa batteries project. Even if they open sparks. Those of you who've been to Mansa, you know that. So what is their scope? Is there what are the lessons? Oh, these batteries, the only batteries because they are for motor vehicles. Those batteries are for the ITT. But it would have evolved because despite the growth in technology, increase in access, comparative increase in access to electricity, we still have batteries. These handheld computer gadgets. Mining revenue transparency and social investment advocacy. Do we have offers? Do we have institutions? I see TI is offering to pick that up. Thank you so much. It's the last one that you have. Please, we are ready for possible outcomes. But we can improve, we can develop, but without those seven, if we commit for funds, then when we come back, being with us, we are able to speak to someone. Is that the last slide? Do you have any offers? Apart from those that I mentioned. You know, I don't have a lawyer, otherwise run there. So, is there anything that has been left out, that hasn't been captured, so that we can put? What is missing? Any hands? Any going once, going twice? It could be a sign that we are happy. We are happy that you are happy. Yes.
Thank you. I'm saying personally, I am mentally drained from all the conversations and discussions we're having. So before we can adopt this, is it possible for it to be circulated? We have a look at the recommendations, and maybe tomorrow morning we agree, because I believe the PS had indicated that we're expecting these recommendations, and we want to make sure that they are speaking to the issues that were discussed at this point. That's my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a proposal that we send this to, and we spend the next couple of hours, 3 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, reflect on them so that by 12 hours, 10 hours tomorrow, share with the wider stakeholders. Is that also most any proposal for secondary counter proposal? Those hands against proposals for secondary. Thank you. So if there's a third hand, it's validated. All your things. I am not going to talk about because as I mentioned, the chair will come. But as many of you are aware, the three of the Zambia is reserved specifically for civil society organizations that are working in this space. That is what it is. CSOs. But tomorrow we are expecting civil society organizations to show up here so that we can discuss how we can enhance governance, how we sharpen, how can we better next 4 months or so. So the partners that are here, that are not civil society organizations, the community voice representatives, the students, are not welcome. Done a great job in the last 2 days, but tomorrow we want to go internally and say, 3 parts. Where can we
So it's a closed door meeting. It's essentially by invitation. Tomorrow, it's also elections for the representatives of CEOs of such organizations on the Zambia EIT. EIT is Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. State. At the end of the 2024 summit, we adopted terms of reference. The key inclusion in terms of reference, elections, but also that these elections be managed by an independent election management board. That is what Secretariat has been working to facilitate. Some of you in this audience applied, we have not given feedback, because that's the job of the independent elections board to make the announcement. As you know. At this juncture, I'd like to introduce the independent management body that will help us in the elections tomorrow after we have our sessions. To come and introduce themselves and tell us in a few words, then I'll pick it up. So for this process, we have picked support, and support in this room is represented by its executive director, Arthur. Welcome, sir. Please let's encourage him as he walks.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I see. Yeah, as introduced, my name is Arthur Biunda. I come from the Southern African Center for the Constructive Resolutions of Disputes. And our organization have been contracted, or we are contracted to help manage the elections tomorrow. So my thing here is just to introduce someone a little bit, as well as maybe indicate what time we are going to have our elections and what is expected of us. So when we were conducting a summit, we requested for documents that guide the elections of this particular body, and we are given the terms of reference as well as the code of conduct, which gave us an outline of what is expected. A call for those that are interested in what I did was sent out, and we received 8 organizations that expressed interest, which will continue with tomorrow. So tomorrow the elections will be done at 14 hours. But in the morning, we requested that we are given an opportunity to go through the electoral laws together, because we are told that the electoral laws are new for this particular group, and so that we have an understanding and an agreement that these are the rules that we agreed that we have applied. Then in the afternoon, we got the elections. So support, for those of you who don't know it, is a civil society organization that is based in Zambia and registered in Zambia, but it has its operations in the certain region. Our focus is security sector governance, election management and observation, as well as human rights defenders promotion or support. We have been in existence since 1999, but got registered in 2000. And since then, we've been doing this work of elections. We managed elections for different organizations in Zambia, and small and big. We've also done election monitoring since 2000 for the government of Zambia. So we are happy to be part of the process. So we publish what UPA conducted us and we looked at the guidelines. We learned that these are new guidelines. And this is the first election that is going to be conducted by an independent body. So, and then we were told that this election needs 12 CSOs, 12 CSOs. But those that expressed interest are only 8. We are still looking at the eligibility criteria which were given and see if they are eligible, because guidelines also tells us who is eligible and who is not eligible. So in the morning tomorrow, we announce those that are eligible. But we want to make a request that for us to conduct an election, maybe we can still open the nomination people with your guidance. If we are allowed to continue sending nominations until tomorrow 10 hours, so that maybe we can reach the threshold that is needed, then we compile the list together. That is if you agree that we do that. Because I think the guidance will not give, but the communication that was sent had specific threshold for nomination, say the date that people are supposed to send their nominations. So if it is agreeable, we request that organizations that are still interested but they didn't send in their nominations can still send their nominations to support. I will share the email address, which is elections@support.com. elections@support.com. Then you also put in copy info@support.com, so that we have I think the needed number of those that should be voted in, and we strengthen our constitution. However, before we do that, I'll ask for possessors. Do we agree that we open the nomination until tomorrow 10 hours? We'll get a proposal and get someone who second, and then we. Yes, sir. Okay, that is proposal. Actually, is very valid. We do not have enough time, and if the people are not interested in that discussion, they are not tomorrow, then I think they will not be part of the discussion. So I think I'll get guidance from Secretariat if we go with that that way. But people say that proposal.
I second with a merit that we suspend the discussion, as some of the members that are here are not partakers of the camp that we are about to undertake. I submit.
Thank you. Madam Sir.
I think the rationale for bringing this up is to give those who may be interested time to submit. But nonetheless, every secretary can find another way to communicate, because just bringing this to the table for tomorrow would give people time to submit, unless we say tomorrow that will be discussed so that if there will be any changes, it can be done there. So I think maybe Secretary can communicate to the audience after this.
Thank you. I'll just still do nomination on the floor, 14 minutes, and then have the discussion with the board. The first thing, if the body tomorrow will allow, I think that that way we can progress. Secretary.
What I'm actually saying is that we need 2 positions. There are only 8. So, how much time to get extra? There are 2 proposals. That we'll do that tomorrow, or we do it from send emails, WhatsApp groups. Do you need to provide something? So someone says they can review applications now. Then we can resume this tomorrow. Yes, since there's capacity process the new applications. Unless Mr. Mutelo, unless your question was actually on the substance of the proposal and not on the procedure, because there are 2 aspects. Is it on the substance or on the procedure? What did you write on?
I think my point is, I was thinking that the subject that has been brought at a room forum. We are supposed to, Secretariat, even extending a deadline was put. If we say we extend the nomination, where is the authority coming from to extend the nomination? Whose authority? So I'm saying these are the issues that are not supposed to be brought here, because the people who are here, not all of them are interested in part to that issue. So if we say somebody should receive the nomination, where is the authority of support getting the nomination from? That's what I'm saying. But if we can suspend this, because not everybody is interested. This is an internal issue, as you said, as Secretary, which we are supposed to discuss from morning until up to lunch. We would make resolutions so that when it reaches election time. But when we start doing those discussions now, I'm saying this is a wrong forum, that we should suspend this and discuss tomorrow. So that's why I'm questioning if this is receive applications. Where is the authority that SACOT is getting to get new nomination? So,
is there any comment on that? Any reflections? You want to say something? Secretariat was mandated to organize elections, but not to conduct elections. I hope there's a difference. And part of the organizing election was preparing for the elections. In terms of reference, go for proposals, invitations, and so on and so forth. Beyond setting the date for the closure, when the applications for expressions of interests should close, the trial doesn't happen. To determine the next step is the job of the election board. And to get to SACOT, there was a call. So the issue of mandates, there was a call that was generated and circulated. The same channels, the channel that was used or were used
to invite civil society to express interest in being elected was used. Is this the right forum? Yes, it is. For an update, not for the elections, for an update. We could have sent an email and just said, this is where we are, but we said in the spirit of yeah, let's share. Then we leave the nitty-gritties to the actual election. So, first of all, Zambia has the mandate, because the terms of reference asked Secretary to look for. So the members last year said, we elections next year, Secretary, we need an mechanism. So that's how support comes in. It is not just, we didn't just dream it. So that is how support we need another organization. The only reason this question comes is because we have 8 out of 12 positions. So who makes the change? It's us. Maybe that's where your point comes. So the decision about changing should be made tomorrow. Otherwise, we think this is, they need to know. Yeah, they need to. And Sako, somebody I want to suppose I'm joking. His comments. Wait for the mic.
It's not the first time, it's the second time. We use second 24 as government comments. So we are doing it for second. So we're sending AIT to another committee.
Gentlemen and ladies, we close the meeting with a reflection from Mr. Joseph, then a prayer. Mr. Joseph. Thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah. Was change, you will say, oh, feeling better. But we are civil society organization to thank every organization that came down, the chairperson down, thank you very much. And so, thank you for bringing your contribution. As we do the match, I want to leave a reflection in our minds. Regions, organizations. When we travel to China, we envy China. We envy the products that come from there. When we go to Dubai, you have seen how Dubai. You have seen how powerful countries are coming to the minerals. To change those countries, China has changed over the citizens are going by Chinese. And why they are going to take right by we Zambians are going to. We civil society organization are going to possibility. The next step is how much finance. Civil society organization that's like government that come and government do the right thing. get what we have to do. The things are done well, that's what the organization can come. How do you manage them? Even what the organization, when things are hard, let's not close the eyes. But our heads inside. No one going to make this better. God has given us both proper purpose. Let's change. Let's extract the world. Let's change poverty. I spoke to comrades there that we are educated from the knowledge. Influence decisions by our it's Zambia children organizations that say if we don't have when we are knowledge, God will not spare us. Let's take it not spare us. Thank you for that. Come with us in the organization. This is what we can. Thanks for the families that giving us knowledge. We go and write our knowledge. If a company is performing well in your community, it's social organization. They are also an accomplice. They are also let's go and be justice for your country in our space. Not just be given to us. Or those things that is correct put together. It's changed. Thank you, Victor. The organizers, even for the put the top of the bring us together. Let this put the best. We want to see the speed used when you are getting money from donors. The same speed using to upgrade our communities. Let's work together. Get for common interest. In any space. Operation to pay the whatever you are using. Let's not promote vision. Let's see what's going to come together for many issues that is coming. Especially either in mindset, whether in climate issues, the food of study. This is the nation going. That's it. What the next step, come and say this. Which that we do from gender, the spectrum of mindset. The door is open. But we get to any issues. For public sharing, the DRC, the Camon, where people sharing model of Camon in DRC. The communities, percentage, down the percentage, the province percentage, and the central government percentage. That's why you see when always whatever province is developed for the government. No one is going to put this country better than it. Let's change the narrative, be one of the points that the world is. Those few remarks wish David and thank God for bringing us together. Thank you very much.
Tomorrow, can we gather 9 minutes? Yeah. Start. Thank you. We're using the WhatsApp to talk with you and what
Shall we rise? Okay, as we are standing, let us remember today is our last day. And as we pray, let us remember that this prayer shall take us back home. Amen. Shall we bow for a prayer? Our Heavenly Master, we come before the throne of mercy this evening today. God, I want to say thank you for your love, your mercies, your goodness, your care, your divine protection upon us as your people, as your children of this country. God, we pray, asking for more of your wisdom, realizing that you've been with us from the first day, yesterday, up to today, deliberating on so many issues through this year's mining in Indaba. God, we pray that as we have discussed, talked about so many things, we know that this has been done for the betterment of our country. And we believe in you, God, that with your presence, we shall go far. With your help, God, this will not end here. And so we pray that may you help us, may you hold us by hand, may you journey with us as we are fighting for a better Zambia, a better future, so that the issue to do with poverty and many other issues come to the end. And Father, as we come to the end of the meeting this evening, we pray that remember to go with every one of us, one by one. May you be the greatest protector. May you be our guide. May you be our driver. May you remember us, O Lord. Lord, I commit everyone here into your hands. Mwende nafe, mukhale nafe, musogolele wina yesu. It is in Jesus' mighty name, Lord, we pray, with our hearts full of thanksgiving. Amen. Thank you.